look out for the result.
Now, are we about to hit a perfect storm where an increasingly elderly population is combined with a falling birth rate? We're already starting to see the effects of people having fewer children over on the Isle of Wight, for instance. The council there wanted to close 5 primary schools because they said they had more places than they needed. Campaigns by parents got the 5 reduced to 2, but the council says the gap could just get wider. School funding is calculated per pupil, so a class of 20 gets £45,000 less than a class of 30. That pinch in population numbers will continue up the generations. With people living longer, that could mean a smaller workforce paying the taxes for a much larger group of retirees, which in turn probably means that the retirement age will have to go up still further. Joining us now is Professor Jane Falkingham from the University of Southampton, where you're a Professor of Demography and International Social Policy. We'll stay local for a second. The Isle of Wight has some other factors, doesn't it? Because young families tend to move off the island, although we were talking about the schools there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when people reach 18, they tend to move off the island, and some go back, but many don't. And so actually the age structure of the population on the Isle of Wight is already quite elderly. Just to give you an example, last year there was 1,100 births on the Isle of Wight, and in Southampton, just a mile away, there were 3,000 births. So that's 3 times as many babies born in Southampton as on the whole of the Isle of Wight.
Right. Is it about babies being born in particular areas? Because people do move around. You know, a lot of youngsters head off to London. Or is there a north-south split?
So the birth rate's fallen right across the country. So we currently have the total fertility rate, a bit technical for a Sunday morning, but the total fertility rate is the number of children you would have on average if you gave birth across your whole life course.
2.5 children, isn't it?
2.5. At the moment, it is down to 1.44.
Is it?
So lowest rate ever recorded.
And across the country as a whole?
And that's across the country as a whole, but it's fallen in all the different regions of the country.
Right.
So we are seeing a period that we're living through where the birth rate's fallen.
Yeah. And the planners know this. People can take account of it. But it's the growing elderly as well. Or the great thing that people are living longer, no?
Absolutely. So living longer is something to be celebrated. I think we absolutely need to say that the improvement in life expectancy is one of the biggest achievements of humanity over the last couple of centuries. The ageing of the population, as opposed to the ageing of the people themselves, individuals themselves, is actually largely driven by the changes in the birth rate, because the birth rate determines how many people are entering at the bottom of the population.
Oh, okay.
So the ageing of the population we are going to see over the next 20 years is me, is you. It's those baby boomers born in the 1960s and the high rates of births in the past feeding through.
Right. And does that, I mean, what should we be doing about it? You can tell us what's happening. And actually, it's quite surprising. Yeah.
Well, no, I've been doing research on ageing for about 30 years now.
Yeah.
So it's not really taking us by surprise.
No.
And we saw those...
Sorry, surprising to me to hear about it, yes.
Well, we saw, I think the first change in the pension age was actually in 1995, when we moved from 60 to 65. And then we're gradually adjusting upwards. And those adjustments actually reflect the changes in life expectancy, because we are all living longer.
Right. But the bit about the falling birth rate, is that because people are having babies later?
Partly that we're having later, and partly that we're having fewer.
And fewer as well.
Fewer and later.
And those are pretty significant things that we need to do something about it. So do you think the Hampshire County Council, these have to be taken into account because of schools?
Yeah, they do. So they affect the enrolment numbers on schools, and effectively that will impact then the funding and then the school budget that they have. So we'll have to have a look at the district and the areas regarding those enrolment numbers. So obviously there's an impact there. And we also know obviously then the pressures on social care and social services is that the ageing population. And then wider than that, when we talk about our workforce and our talent pool and the contribution into national insurance and taxes. So it's quite wide ranging. I've got 2 sons. They're into their mid to late 20s, you know, and looking at them, you know, some of the choices that they have or the decisions that they are made. You know, one, family unit is really important to them, and priorities such as getting married and owning their house is also a priority. However, they're really difficult to achieve financially, the cost of living, the job market itself, the stability of making sure that you have a job to be able to afford even the rent, let alone then saving for a mortgage. And they're all choices. And I think that knock-on effect is either the choice is that they leave it too late, they're not having children, or they're having children later. But I think regarding when we talk about initiatives, it's making sure that as a government, you know, we talk about the value of that family unit. We benefit that family unit. We look at that across society.
Should we be encouraging families to have more children, or is that just someone's choice?
So my view is that people should be able to have the children that they want to have. And unfortunately, I think you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I read recently that on average, people are having one fewer child than they would ideally like to have. And I think that reflects some things that perhaps government can't do things about, but some things where actually if we look at the increasing unaffordability of housing for young families over the last decade and a half or longer, we look at the issues around the cost of living and the way that wages haven't kept up with prices. These are trends that we have seen for quite some time.
Is affordability part of it?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So definitely the delay in starting your families. We've seen that the falls in the birth rate have actually been higher in the most deprived parts of the country. And so people are delaying until they can afford housing.
That's interesting.
So it's part of the picture. Yeah. Some people are choosing not to have children as well because of the environment, just linking through to your parking and your gas guzzling item earlier on. And then people are, as you say, delaying and then not able to have children. There's also accessing then to IVF and services as well.
I was interested as well that you were talking about 4 generations in a family, that there's this sort of rush hour time when people are looking after young children, grandchildren maybe, and also looking after more frail elderly parents. Yeah. And that's not happened before.
No, that's not happened before. So that's the emergence of the 4 we call it the double sandwich generation. So it's somebody who's actually got their elderly parents alive and their adult children and possibly grandchildren. And actually supporting your adult children to participate in the labour market by taking care of your grandchildren is becoming a much bigger thing than was in the past. And you're combining that with caring for your elderly parents.
Right. There's no easy answers to these things either, but you've made us aware of some of the changes. Thank you very much.